Hello friends, James Corbett here, CorbettReport.com. It is the 12th of September 2017, and if you went to statnews.com, aka the website of STAT, a health and life sciences website, you will have found this article, How Pharma Sales Reps Help Me Be a More Up-to-Date Doctor by Robert Yapundich, that was posted September 1st, 2017, and the long and short of this is it's surrounding federal lawmakers scrutinizing the laws that govern how the drug industry communicates with doctors, and this is written by a neurologist in practice for more than 20 years who has had experience of the changes that regulate and limit the drug industry's interaction with physicians. And this is this doctor's experience, and he's talking about drug detailers, an industry term if ever there was one, also known as pharmaceutical sales reps, or big pharma pimps would probably be more accurate. The people who go around and basically sell or advertise new drugs to doctors with various incentives. But don't worry, there are lots of good regulations in place about what those incentives can be. For example, if they sponsor a meal, the meal must be modest and served at the doctor's place of practice, such as an office or hospital, rather than at a restaurant. So I guess the gambling weekends at the casino with hookers and blow probably comes later in the deal, but at any rate, it's not within the regulations. And those rules make sense and they're all good, but we really do need those drug detailers because, gosh darn, they're so important to the way the industry functions. So I think you get the gist of where this article is going. And the author even provides a handy-dandy anecdote for how to understand this practice. Here's an example from my practice. I recently attended an office lunch program about a medication I had not heard of for Parkinson's disease psychosis, a terrifying condition that leads to hallucinations and delusions. The drug representative discussed the clinical data, FDA-approved indications, and potential side effects for the new medication. Later that week, I saw a patient with worsening Parkinson's disease, hallucinations, and delusions. His symptoms were serious enough that nursing home care was an option, though that was something his family hoped to avoid. Thanks to what I'd learned at the lunch program, I informed the family about this new medication and wrote a prescription for it. The drug eased the patient's symptoms enough that the family was able to continue caring for him at home. Oh, what a heartwarming little story, etc., etc. Drug detailers are great. Let's not tweak the rules or regulations too much. Signed, Big Pharma. Robert Yapundich. Independent neurologist, right? No, wrong. In fact, you'll note, if you are looking at this video closely, you'll note that I'm not on statnews.com. I'm on the Wayback Machine at the Internet Archive, archive.org, a very handy resource for people in case you don't know of its existence. But this is the archived version of this story, which no longer exists in this form on statnews.com because, as healthnewsreview.org pointed out a few days after it was posted, a blow to Stat's credibility, MD listed as author of op-ed praising drug reps didn't write it. Ghostwriting, PR influence. Oh, what a shocker. So the long and short of this is that this article was not written by Yapundich. It was the first draft came from the Alliance for Patient Access, of which Yapundich is let me get this straight, a board member, is on the board of AFPA. And his membership is disclosed in the stat piece. Oh, well, that's good. But they actually wrote the first draft of this, and he edited that draft. So he didn't actually write this piece. And he also didn't disclose any of this to Stat News that he was reporting for. Now, it gets worse and worse from here. Yapundich stated clearly that he did not write the initial draft of the article and doesn't know who did. He said he agrees with the spirit of the article and wouldn't have put his name to it otherwise. AFPA sent me an initial draft that they composed. I made some changes and edits to it, and the process went back and forth for about a month till it was published. But, oh, look at this. As we reported earlier this week, Yapundich received more than $300,000 from the drug industry between 2013 and 2016, according to Federal Open Payments Database. And yet, disclosure of that conflict of interest was initially missing from Yapundich's op-ed. It was addressed only after an outcry in the comments section of the stat piece and on Twitter. So basically, a lot of other people did the homework that Stat News editors should have done, quote unquote, to find out, oh, this guy is a drug industry beneficiary to a large extent. Yes, maybe this is not a completely neutral piece of opinion here. But wait, it gets even worse, because You remember, of course, that wonderful story from his own practice where he talked about the patient and his own experience with this. Well, it turns out, yeah, that part wasn't true either. As StatNews.com now points out in their editor's note about the retraction of this article, that was completely made up. We also asked Yapundich to address reader questions about the veracity of the central anecdote in the piece. He said the anecdote was accurate as written, but Yapundich later told Health News Review that the anecdote was not, in fact, accurate. After that interview was posted Thursday afternoon, we contacted Yapundich again, and he conceded to Stat that the anecdote was inaccurate. And specifically, it's actually hilarious in a sick way. Yapundich is listed as a promotional speaker for Acadia Pharmaceuticals drug Nuplazid, i.e. that Parkinson disease drug that he was talking about, in the open payments database. However, the Stat piece suggests that he learned of this particular medication from a company-sponsored lunch program. Thanks to what I learned at the lunch program, blah, blah, blah. I've heard shifting explanations to how this particular anecdote went down, and I second SAFE's call for an investigation to reconcile the discrepancies. According to an email from Stat Scarrett, Yapundich said he absolutely did not fabricate any stories, as Charles Safe alleged. He said he heard about the Parkinson's drug from an industry rep and spoke on its behalf later. Oh, well, isn't that nice? So he is a pimp for the drug that he's saying that he just learned about and was putting it on his patients, and that's why we need drug detailers. So the entire thing stinks to high heaven. It's an example of ghostwriting by the industry, and unlike what Health News Review says, I don't think this is necessarily a blow to Stat's credibility, or at any rate, what credibility. If you want to look into Stat and what it is, it turns out, oh yeah, it was launched by the owner of the Boston Globe, it's produced by Boston Globe Media, it features an executive editor who was previously New York Times and Politico. Yeah, I think you get the idea. And if you look at the notable stories they've broken, again, I think this is an industry-friendly publication, let's put it that way. So I'm not sure how much of a blow to the credibility it is, but it certainly does show the editorial policies that they have in place and the types of things they get through. And if you think this is just about one website or just about this one piece, it certainly isn't, as I have covered before. For example, in my piece on Seralini's revenge, Monsanto rocked by new court documents, I pointed out the Monsanto secret documents dump of data and emails that have come out of that multi-district litigation going on in the California Northern District Court right now that I've written about before, and specifically about the ghostwriting of many key articles. Even the New York Times covered it, talking about Monsanto emails raise issue of influencing research on Roundup weed killer, and they specifically talk about documents show that Henry I. Miller, an academic and vocal proponent of genetically modified crops, asked Monsanto to draft an article for him that largely mirrored one that appeared under his name on Forbes' website in 2015. Mr. Miller could not be reached for comment. And yes, you can actually go into the documents and take a look at the draft of the article that he was given. March Madness from the United Nations. The NCAA basketball tournament has started, and I hope I pick my brackets as well as I predicted the outcome of this month's meeting of blah, blah, blah. And then you can go to the Forbes article, March Madness from the United Nations. The NCAA basketball tournament has started, and I hope I've picked my brackets as well as... i.e., he copied and pasted what the industry told him to say. Ghost writing. It happens all the time. Now, in this case, there was something of a happy ending to this because Henry I. Miller did get all of his contributions to Forbes pulled from the website, and his name now lives in infamy. But at any rate, this goes on a lot more than I think a lot of people would like to admit. So I'm sure I don't have to tell my regular listeners this, but at any rate, it's good to know about these stories, to gently remind some of the people in your life who don't know about these types of things, how these websites that purport to be neutral or third party, and oh, don't worry, they have editorial standards and practices in effect, so these types of things don't happen. Yes, they do happen. Ghostwriting by the industry is a very common phenomenon. It happens all the time, and this is the exact type of thing that would be called conspiracy theory if it were not conspiracy fact. It happens. Ghostwriting happens. The big pharma and big agra and every other industry is paying different websites and different writers in different ways to basically publish their PR material for them and make it look like third-person material. So just another thing to keep in mind when you're browsing around for information on sites like these. Anyway, that's going to do it for today. James Corbett, CorbettReport.com.